All right, we're aiming to multiply decimals, and we are going to have our calculators handy so we can multiply with our calculator. I'll show you how to do it without a calculator. Right, the key idea is when you're multiplying decimals, start by ignoring the decimal points. Oh, that makes life easier. Perform the multiplication as you would normally, and once you've got your answer, place the decimal point in the correct position. So this is the trick to multiplying decimals. If you haven't got a calculator in front of you, this is how you work it out. So the correct position of the decimal point in the answer is found by following the rule. The total number of decimal places in the numbers in the question is equal to the total number of decimal places in the answer. So I have 5.32. That has two decimal places, tenths and hundredths. And I'm multiplying that by 1.2, which has one decimal place. So I would multiply, as it shows over here, 532 times 12. This is how I would do it without my calculator. It'll come out with 6408. Again, we had two decimal places plus one decimal place in our question, so our answer is going to have 1, 2, 3 decimal places. So that's how we know that 6408 is actually 6.408, leaving us 3 decimal places in the answer. And it's always worth estimating your answer, so you have an idea of what it should look like. Because when we start playing with decimal places, the same as we did with powers of 10, it's really easy to miscount 1 decimal place, 2 decimal places. And I've said before, if you have a question for how much a cat weighs, and you get 650 kilos, when the answer is 6.5 kilos, you should really be aware of that exactly. That that's too heavy, and I think maybe I might have done it wrong. So in this case, I'll allow you to check your decimal points in the correct place. You do a little estimation. You can round it. So 2.93, if I'm going to round that to the nearest easily workable number, I'm going to round up to 3. Because the number after 2, 9, is 5 or higher. So I'll round up to 3. And in this case, 5.17, that rounds to 5. So my answer should be, this is a great little symbol here, approximately. So 3 times 5 is not exactly what the answer is. It'll be 2.93 times 5.17, and it should be around 15. And as you know, if you're multiplying by powers of 10, you can ignore the zeros at the start, work out the multipliers, and then position your decimal point, remembering to put your decimal point in favor of the powers of 10. So if we multiplied by 10, we put back zeros so that our decimal point has moved back over 1. So the first question asks us to estimate the following by first rounding each decimal to the nearest whole number. Estimate first. 4.13 times 7.62 is about equal to 4 times 8. It isn't equal to 4 times 8, but if I round 4 and I round 7.6, each of those to the nearest whole number, it's about 4, it's about 8, and that answer is 32. I'll do the next one. The next one is 2.8 times 12.071, my goodness, is about equal to, or is approximate to, let's see, 2.8, we'll round up to 3, times 12.0, even though there's a 7 after that, the critical digit is 0, so 12.0 is about 12, and that answer is 36. So I could say that 2.8 times 12.071 is about 36, but it's not exactly 36. Now, to calculate this one, I'm going to have my calculator handy to check it. The rule is, if I've got 2 decimal points, I'm going to have 2 decimal points at the end. There's nothing after the 7, oops, so there's nothing there. So I'm going to do 1231 times 7, and that's going to give me 8617. Is that what your calculator tells you?
Yeah.
And if you put the decimal point in, again, there's 2 decimal points here. My calculator should tell me that it's 86.17. Now you go ahead and plug in the numbers for the next one. I'm going to take out my decimals, and I'm going to multiply this. Where do I put that decimal point? What did your calculator tell you? Between 5 and 0, and that makes sense because our original question has 2 decimal points plus 1 more decimal point, which is our 3 decimal points. Now to calculate this one, I'm going to ignore those zeros until the end. So one way to think about it is going 2.65, and then I can factor out 4 times 10,000. And hopefully you can see that 4 times 10,000 will give me 40,000. So what I'm going to do first is 2.65 times 4. But if I don't have a calculator, I'm going to do it like this. That'll give me 1060. And I'll go back. If I have a calculator, I don't need to do this. But if I don't, I put my decimal there. And remember, I've got to multiply that by 10,000. How many zeros are there in 10,000?
3. 4.
1, 2, 3. Looks like 4. So I'm going to take my decimal place and move 1, 2, 3, 4. So my answer is 106,000. I can do the same thing with 0.032 times, I'm going to factor out that 600 to be 6 times 100. And I'm just going to forget about the 100 for the moment. And then I'm going to just do it really easy. 32 times 6, me 192, but aha. I've got 3 decimal places to think of, so my calculator will tell me that it's 0.192, and then I've still got to multiply that by 100. So my final answer is, I've got 2 zeros, so I move my decimal place, or rather my numbers across the decimal place. So it looks like the decimal place moves 2 to the right, and I've got 19.2.